Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call the meeting to order on Wednesday, February 5th at 6:03. This is our first budget workshop, and we'll take the roll call. Thank you.
Chairman Bondigan.
Here.
Vice Chair Nafrio.
Here.
Secretary Sienna.
Here.
Judy Gannon.
Present.
Zachary Canada.
Here.
Kim Dawson.
Here.
Victoria Lanza.
Here.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. We will have Superintendent's 25-26 budget and capital request.
Okay, thank you. As you recall, last board meeting, you had a packet that we handed out to you as part of our budget presentation, and then the opportunity for you to ask questions and to send questions. So what we did is we want to put the questions that were asked as part of our PowerPoint so that everyone can see the great questions that you asked for transparency, to see what was discussed, and then the answers that came back out to the business office or to the curriculum or special ed office. Now, as you know, this is our workshop tonight. We have a series of workshops that are scheduled. We're dependent upon how much time you think you need in order to come to a number that you're comfortable with, respecting and reflecting upon the mission of our school system, some of our highest priorities, and what we're looking to achieve. The next part of that will be to go to the town, and we've already talked about some things that we'd like to do once we establish a number, to work in collaboration with the town as we build our budget and it goes to the town in April, okay? That being said, we have a 28-slide show that we're going to have as part of a PowerPoint. We're going to drop the lights for you. It's an opportunity for you to ask any and all questions, anything pointed that as you were going through the information that you felt you need clarity on. Markers here, the administrators are obviously all here as well. They put a great deal of time and effort into the building of this budget. As I stated at the last meeting, there's no new initiatives in this budget. There's no new programs in this budget. This is the result of us, and as we'll explain, having to use monies to offset what we received over the last several years, okay? Now, we're not alone. If you look around the state and you start following other towns, I had 2 conversations with superintendents today that were much higher than our budget is right now. Now, for various reasons, they're in similar situations that as you watch the news and everything that's going on, everything is going up. Everything is more expensive right now. With contractual obligations and things that, we've had to adjust to, this is why we are at where we're at right now. Okay, does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Any questions before we begin? I want to thank everyone for their questions and their patience and working together collaboratively to,
There were some great questions.
Yeah, to spread the word.
If we come to an agreement on something tonight, can we vote on that tonight, or do we have to wait for the whole budget?
The whole number. So it's important that you understand that you're going to be looking at a percentage that you're going to be comfortable with, and then the charge of the administrative team is to go back and look at the number that we have and to then make those hard decisions. Okay, so the administrative team and my heads, department heads, are charged with working with that number and then creatively making those decisions to get to that number. So tonight is not the opportunity to say, I want this, I don't want that. Once we get a number that you are comfortable bringing to the council and then to the town, we have to go back and do the hard work. That's the role of the board, that's the role of the administrative team, to collectively work together in a pre-K through post-high school experience for all of our learners.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, that being said, Mr. Lonsdale, would you please come forward? And we'll put the PowerPoint on. Please stop at any point in the slide if you have a question. We highlighted in red So you'll be able to time where you've seen some of the responses and then to ask those questions as we go along. And while this is warming up, just so you know, I have not made a decision on school tomorrow, so I know that the 760 viewers right now are wondering, is he going to cancel school or not? As are the staff members and the students.
What's the forecast for? How much snow?
It's not really the amount, it's the timing and if there's ice involved, so we've got some curveballs right now.
morning.
There's a lot that canceled already. 5 o'clock news, a whole bunch of them were on there already.
Okay. So these were direct questions from the Board of Ed. I'm not going to read them out to you, but I'm going to ask Martha to kind of highlight some of the things about the question of the 18.49 increase in benefits. And she'll speak to last year at the end of the year and what we did, which then obviously left a hole for this year. So Martha, can you
After
start?
this, can we go back to question 1, because I do have a question on that.
Absolutely.
Question 1 was moved to
Yeah.
later in the presentation
Okay.
because there were other pre-K pieces later, so we put
Yeah,
them
we're
together.
talking
Topic.
later.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Thank you.
Yes, so that's a question that is a good one, that if there's something that you want to revisit and go to, and then we'll, obviously we moved it for that reason, because there's other things that we want to present collectively with the pre-K question. All right?
So the benefit category as a whole consists of health insurance, life insurance, disability, workman's comp, all those things that have to do with benefits related to our employees. So the question here is, what is causing the 18.49% increase in benefits, and what is the history of the yearly increases? So the majority of that 18.49% increase is on our health insurance line specifically. We're estimating a 9% renewal on our health insurance because that's what the industry trend has been. The claim experience for our district is actually very good. We're a very healthy group, but we do belong to the Connecticut Partnership Plan. And so that's what the average increase has been. If you're not familiar with the Connecticut Partnership Plan, it is a collaborative group of towns and boards of ed and other nonprofit agencies that all have come together to offer the same exact benefits to their employees. So that's what that is. The 9% increase comes out to $441,000. And then the remainder of the increase that you'll see on that budget line is approximately $391,000. And the reason for that is because in June of 2024, we paid the July 2024 health insurance invoice. And we did this for 2 reasons. One, because our payment is due for July 1st in order to keep the insurance active. And number 2, it was a way of reducing our current year budget, so 24-25, because we have the funds available in 23-24. So now that increase is actually, if you think about it as adding a 12th month back for the coming year. So that's the reason for the large increase you'll see specifically in the health insurance. The other increase that I didn't identify here is there is also the severance account. And that is an increase over the current year as well. So those two things are the two drivers of that 18.49%.
Any questions on that first line about health insurance?
How much did the severance increase? You said you didn't include
I can check for you once the lights come on.
it. Okay.
Does everyone understand the prepayment in June? All right, and then, we were working off a 1.5 increase, so it was a way to offset the status quo that was at 6.84. Okay.
Oh, and actually, this is
There you go.
all of the lines that make up that benefit category. So if you look down to a little further than the middle, you'll see severance 229. That increase was 17,000, which amounted to 42%. So when you take all those pluses and minuses together, the total of that group is the 18.49. How was a $60,000 savings achieved in support programs? So support programs is another collection of a group of program numbers. So it's made up of social work, guidance, nurses, psychologists, speech and language, occupational therapy, physical therapy, and library. Remember, there are not any salaries associated with the costs that you see here. These are just the expenditure lines. So we are reducing the speech and language professional service line. So those were things that were contracted out by $71,983. And we are actually moving $66,700 to the special education line, which you'll see is listed there, based on anticipated need. You're not going to see the plus or the increase of that 66,000 because special ed is not in this support group. Special ed stands on its own. So that's why it looks like there's a reduction, but really when you add those two things together, there's not much of a reduction. How did the district spend the ESSER 3 grants? So the ESSER 3, the ARP ESSER 3 grant was awarded on July 1st, and it ran through September of this year. The total budget amount was $618,543, and it was used to administer high-quality assessments, basically tracking student academic progress and evaluating them, comparing to pre-pandemic grades and progress to identify students that experienced learning loss due to the pandemic. So this was one of those grants that came out as a result of COVID. Over the course of the grant, so over the course of those 4 years, we actually spent $283,500 specifically on paraprofessionals. And we didn't hire any new paras during that time. We just slid it over to the grant because the grant was available. Our staffing is never dependent on if we get a grant or not. It's always based on our student and program needs. So there was a question about Object 118 and 119 and if those were affected by grants. So Object 118 is our building substitute line, and Object 119 are our long-term substitutes. Building substitutes, if you're not familiar, are actual district employees. They come into the building every day. They become familiar with the different classrooms. They become familiar with the schedules. And when one of our regular certified teachers is out, that substitute will go into that classroom and carry on the lesson for the day. A long-term sub is a sub that's specifically hired to cover for one individual teacher. So they may be out because they're sick on medical leave, they may be out on parenthood leave, or we may have had somebody resign and we're hiring a long-term sub to cover that position until we post and find a permanent replacement. So those are the two differences between a long-term and a building sub. And we never use grants to fill either one of those positions.
I got a question for you, Martha, on that one. Just my general knowledge here. So building subs, they're basically on standby, is what I'm understanding. But they show up, they come in as a district employee, they show up and they do the thing. In the event that they're not needed, what happens?
I believe there's always somebody out in the building.
Okay, I mean, like if you have, I mean, how many, I mean, I don't know the numbers, but it's like how many are building subs do we have per, let's say,
So I'll start with Beth. 2 of your own.
Yeah, 3.
3 in MBS. High school is 3. 3 at the high school. Okay. 3. 3 at PBS.
got it. In the event that they're not needed, what, do they get sent home or?
So that will go all our schools.
I'm sorry?
Numbers who are out most days. Even if we don't have staff members out, we may have meetings or coverage needs throughout.
Okay. And I guess the next question would be, is that an adequate number to have on staff, like, ready to go?
I mean, I'll speak for all of them. I'm sure they'd want more. They
Well,
can use
the
them.
question, I mean, that's a realistic question, right?
Right.
Are you, do you feel like you're in a pinch, or like constantly, or do you feel like you're in a good space more likely than not?
Generally speaking, that's sufficient for the high school.
Yeah.
But then it's dependent upon if we have long-term sub needs too. There are certain certification areas where there are no long-term subs available.
Roger that.
Math, special ed, language, science, those are very difficult for us to get. So if you have someone out on maternity leave or unexpected treatment, medical leave, you're using your building sub now as a long-term sub.
Understood. All right. Thank you.
They can also go cover if a teacher had to leave for a PPT or, some sort of meeting, they can fill in for those couple of periods for this teacher and then go to somebody else.
And we've tried to remain competitive or get more competitive with surrounding towns for substitutes, but it takes time to get to the levels that the other districts are at. So we have made some progress, but a more efficient way to do it is through the building subs. I think we pay 16
It's more than that.
in change or whatever it is for a 35-hour week.
Yeah, I think it's probably closer to 18.
18,
Yeah.
so at 18 with a 35-hour week per hour. And it's a real bang for the buck with what we're able to achieve. We eliminated the greeters last year, and I think all 4 or 3 of them rolled in as building subs and are working as building subs. 2 of them were longtime certified teachers in the district and fill a huge void. We had 1 actually go back and do a long-term sub in English after an English teacher went out. So,
So we're getting a certified teacher for $18 and change an hour.
Yeah, when somebody was out.
That's all right.
And do they get
That's what I heard.
benefits as well?
No.
No, don't get that.
No.
Okay.
Makes sense.
I mean, I think it's a great idea because it's continuity, that they know the students know them, so I think it's a
Right.
great idea to have that. But the reason I asked that question was because it said that the allocation must be increased to represent actual cost. So what did we not have an allocation to the actual cost? That language was a little.
Yeah, so our expenditures probably exceeded our budget this year or last year or both.
But you can't always plan for maternity leaves that far in advance.
Right. Okay, so based on
Trying to level
just what you've seen it cost, you want to reflect that
Right,
in
bring
this
it up to
current
more
budget.
what it actually is.
All right, thank you.
So these questions kind of were already answered. The 9% increase for health insurance, the difference between the object for the speech and language and the special ed that I described. So those were already answered, so I don't think I need to go back over them. There is a $40,000 decrease in the magnet school high school line, and that's based on what we knew at the time of, when we were putting the budget together. Of course, that could change. The next one was in regard to the Right to Read grant. So the Right to Read grant was a state grant that was awarded in November of 2022, and it just expired in December of 2024. We had all of our grant funds expended by June of 2024. And the majority of those funds were specifically to purchase the Wit and Wisdom program, the curriculum and the books. So that's what we use that grant for.
Are we looking to continue Wit and Wisdom?
Yes.
Yes.
Carter, you want to speak to that?
Yeah, so that grant was used really in response to a state requirement that we adopt an approved curriculum model, so that caused us to have to shift. So we used in our first year of implementation all of those funds to support instructional supplies and materials associated with that curriculum. Moving forward, that will return to the Board of Ed budget, but that will be a similar expenditure as we had had in the past for language arts curriculum in K-5.
So are we looking at like a new line item or continuous, or is there a line item already for that?
Be in there.
Or is it,
That's already in a line item, either in the curriculum budget or in the building budget. So
Got it.
that's associated JHS and TVS.
understood?
That question's kind of like misleading because we don't really lose grants. It's not like we don't require,
Right.
yes, they expire. Like lose is, you know, we didn't do something right or whatever.
Yeah.
They expire, we don't really lose them.
And then they're gone, we can't reapply for
Yeah, it's
that.
not available anymore.
And then I guess now another question is, because Wit and Wisdom because the grant is expired, and is that still a state requirement?
Oh, yeah.
So it's no different than the unfunded mandates. So,
Right.
you know, the majority of the towns put in their programs, and Carter put ours through, but majority of them were rejected, and then you were put into this prescribed one that you're going to incur costs. So then after the grants run out, we're stuck with these costs as we
Right,
grow the requirements of the program.
Right. And then I guess another question would be, are you seeing in those two schools, right, JHS and TVS, is that right? Are those two schools seeing improvements in those areas where we're trying to improve in as a result of Wit and Wisdom's implications?
It's too soon, so we've only been implementing it for half a school year, so, I mean.
The grant's for 2 years, though. Am I missing something?
No, the grant's for 2 years, but we expended it in that one time.
I understand.
Initial purchase.
Fair enough.
We just spread that out over time, but.
Thank you.
Do we know how much it costs us per year for that curriculum? It's not 55 every year,
No, it
correct?
would be 55 every year. A reasonable bet would be, you know, just maybe 25,000 is what I'm anticipating. And that's spread between two buildings, the curriculum office and the
Fair
budget.
enough.
Thank you.
Thank you.
List of grants was provided to everyone. There was a question about which grants did we recently lose funding for and how will that impact the budget. So as we explained, the ARP-SO3 grant is the only grant that is no longer available for paraprofessional funding. So that will affect the general fund budget in the sense that we now have to add those salary dollars back to our general fund grant. The right to read grant, as Carter just explained, expired, and those supplies for the Wit and Wisdom will need to be funded from the general fund for future years. At this point in time, the Smart Start grants are still up in the air. We're hoping that they get renewed for the 25-26 fiscal year, but we just don't know what the state will do based on that, and we should find that out later in the spring. So do you want to have Sarah take these?
One question on the grants. With the climate of the world right now and the chance of federal grants being taken away, would we have a contingency plan on how to handle that?
Well, I think we do have a contingency plan when you talk about pre-K. And, you know, we were getting ahead of the curve a little bit with the not knowing. We put in for 3 grants. And, you know, that's why we had that being in shared information with Sarah to go into more detail. You know, we're not going to know until April. We're building a budget right now. So in anticipation of that, and you saw where those decisions were backed off of with freezing, you know, those grants being provided. So, I mean, do you want to speak about what it would impact us specifically with that at the federal level?
So
It's only a couple, right?
the federal grants that the district receives as a pass-through from the state. So in other words, the federal government sends funds for Title I, Title II, Title IV, Title III, which we don't receive, and IDEA. So those are federal grants, but the federal government sends those to the state of Connecticut. And then the state of Connecticut distributes those dollars to the school districts. So if there were to be a freeze on the federal funding for those grants, I'm not sure how the state would handle that. I did read an article where the state said they have a, not a profit, they have a balance.
Surplus.
Surplus, thank you. They have a surplus, so that they were considering, using those dollars to send on to the school district, but until it happens, we just don't know. The towns do get the education cost share plan, but those are state funds. And if the town receives any federal funding, I just don't know that. So because those dollars will go directly to them and, not to us, so.
My question on that is, do the funds come directly to us, or is it funneled through town council first? Like, if we get a federal grant, a state grant, are we given that check, or does it go to town council?
It goes to the Connecticut Department of Education, and then the Department of Education sends the funds technically to the town bank account, and then those monies are credited to our grant bank account. But the money is specifically for the school.
Is that a complete list, do you think? Or this?
Yeah, no, that's a complete list.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, there's 11 federal on this, out of the 17.
The grants that I just identified, Title I, Title II, Title IV, and IDEA, each have what we call a carryover and the first year. So those grants are each 2-year grants.
Yeah, see that.
So when one grant is ending, a new grant is coming on. So
It's an
we'll always
overlap.
have
I get it.
what we call carryover funds, which we use first. And then once those carryover funds are expended, we'll move into the new money. So that's why you'll see.
I see it there.
Yeah, you'll see like IDEA grant from July of 22 to June of 24, and then,
Basically, it's leapfrogging, so there's
Yes,
no
exactly.
lapse in coverage.
Right.
Got it. That's good. Thank you.
This is the pre-K.
So, Sarah, you want?
Sure. So this isn't really, I don't think this is the start of pre-K, but this is certainly related to a preschool question. Can you hear me okay, or do you want me to stand up?
We can hear you.
Fine.
Okay, I just want to stand up.
Oh, sorry, give me a thumbs up there.
So as you can see on the screen, the 50-50 ratio really aligns with our expectation for special education programs to be provided within what's considered a least restrictive environment. And so what that means is that to the maximum extent possible, students with disabilities are going to be educated alongside their non-disabled peers. Once you hit that threshold, where more than 50% of the students in the classroom are special education, it now becomes a special education classroom. It is no longer a general education classroom. We do report these numbers to the state as one of the indicators that the state does track. Currently, North Branford Public Schools is coming in at 85%, meaning 85% of the students with disabilities are spending at least 80% of their time with non-disabled peers. The state average right now is 65%. 65% is not the goal. We are looking for as many as possible. We should be having 100% of our students spending more than 80% of their time. It's important to note that we do not have any self-contained classrooms within the district at all. All of our students have an opportunity to get into the general education setting, but that might vary. Our preschool programs, which I think is what this is related to, is really looking at aligning an integrated special education preschool program versus what would be considered a special education preschool program, meaning that we wouldn't hit that mark. Research has found that students who are educated alongside their non-disabled peers are able to make more gains within the process of both academic as well as social goals. And the last question was, do we have to turn away special ed students? That is not ever an option. So anybody who comes to us, whether it's from birth to 3 and is identified as having a disability, student who's in the district who's already identified, or a student who's referred to us and we identify them, they all have a spot, not just within the preschool program, but within the public school program, K through 22.
May I follow up, please?
Of course.
Within the pre-K program then, let's say you already had your 50-50 split in all the classes, and we get a new student, which would make that then a self-contained class. What would happen then?
Well, it just is something that we have to report to the state.
Oh, so you would
When we
include-
design our programs is with that in mind. We have a very skilled preschool coordinator, Colleen Stankiewicz, who works at Jerome, and then Beth Parker, and they've been in the building for years and have been able to see and track patterns over the years. It's not a perfect science. Sometimes a family moves in and they have triplets and they all might be identified and we accept them. We try to develop and arrange those classrooms when we do class placements back in August and September, knowing that the numbers are going to shift and without the crystal ball, trying to foresee so that we can ensure that those numbers are met. But it's not an exact science. What I can say is that our numbers are much more aligned now than they have been in years past because we've been able to expand into the other classrooms.
Okay, but we could have more than the 50%, and that's okay. We just have to report it.
We just
Okay.
have to, when we report to the state, if it becomes a pattern, it does tip our numbers. So when we report out to the state that 80% mark that we want to hit, which we're getting 85%, which is great, we have to report that. And if we're reporting, even if it's just the preschool kiddos, that's going to impact the entire district because what we report is pre-K all the way through 22.
Okay, thank you.
In the open choice program, what happens if a student requires special ed services? So just to make sure you understand, the open choice program is a state of Connecticut grant. It pays school districts to participate. And there's a per student grant amount, which varies on the region and the enrollment. And our area pays $3,000 per student enrolled. So for every student enrolled in our district through the Open Choice Program, we receive $3,000 per that student. If the student requires special education services, that responsibility for holding the PPT meeting and developing the IEP for that student belongs to the receiving district, which would be us.
Roughly how many open choice students?
26.
26?
We're 24.
24
We have
reported?
26 openings and currently 24. And we voted at the last meeting.
Yeah, it was last meeting.
To maintain our 26. We won't put new students in during the year. They'll wait for the end of the school year to put a student if we do have one that leaves the district, but we get paid for the entire year.
Understood. Is there North Branford students that are going, or North Branford residents going somewhere else?
Yes.
Is it, do we know those numbers, or is that hard to track because they're not reporting?
We do, depending upon if they're going to, the state BOAG school or to Vinyl Tech or to the private sector. We always get a list. And,
Okay.
The largest group that's going on right now is the Vinyl Tech.
Right.
We probably have 30, I'm guessing over 30 students there, 9 through 12, that are taking part in the trades program.
Yeah.
We lose very, very few now to the surrounding Catholic schools. And I don't want to say offhand, but in Wallingford, Lyman,
Lyman.
yeah, there's,
Less than 15. I want to say it was 13, something like
yeah.
that.
And those are all considered open choice where we are paying the
No.
3,000? No.
Those are not open
Those are
choice.
just people
Open choice is
chosen.
the Chef O'Neill for
Okay, thank you.
From years ago.
And, I mean, in order for us to participate, for us to have students from North Branford go to other schools, right? Do we have to bring in students, allow students in?
No.
Okay. I guess my question then becomes...
Those are the state technical and the agricultural or specific programs that we don't offer, and we have to give them the ability to...
We don't pay for those though, correct?
We pay transportation.
Transportation, that's it.
Transportation.
So, and just I'm doing my math, right? So on average, our per pupil cost is around 20K?
21.
21? So if it's 21, we're technically out of pocket 18K per student incurring coming in? Is that good math?
Well, you really can't quantify. If you're saying for a school choice kid coming in, one extra student in a classroom.
Well, if it's 26 times, I'm just doing the numbers, and I'm just asking. It's already been voted, so it's not, this isn't a problem. Just for my own math purposes, I want to make sure I got that squared away. It sounds like it's 17 or 18 grand per additional student coming in that we're incurring. That's an accurate statement, correct?
Usually that formula.
I guess if you're thinking of it that way, but basically, we're not adding an extra teacher because that student's coming in, because 26 are spread out from all the different grades. So it's not like we need another teacher because we're taking these students. You might have, 3 in the high school out of 26.
I understand.
So it's not really changing much. And we have kids going to other schools that we're not.
Not more than 26 that go to other schools.
Right, that between the other ones that we're not incurring the 20.
I guess my question though is the math my math is correct then?
I guess
If you look at per pupil cost.
If
Okay,
we're
fair
actually
enough.
spending.
That's all I need to know.
Yeah, I think that it depends on what the formula would be to come up with that number.
Yeah, I don't know that we actually spend that money. I
Or
think
if it's
that's
the
just.
total cost divided by the number of
Right.
students.
The number of total students over our budget, that's where you get that from.
Yes, right.
So that's where I'm getting my numbers from.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just want to make sure I'm on the track.
Yeah.
Thank you.
This question was about the ESSER 3, the IDOS tutoring grant, and the Right to Read grant. We did provide you with a list of those grants, so you will see all of the grants that the district receives on that list. There was a question regarding the cost for all sports programs. So on the attached slide, you'll see a list, I apologize for being so small, of all the account numbers that have to do with athletics. So the green column is the expenditures from 23-24. The blue column is our revised budget for the current year, and the pink column is our proposed budget for next year for all of the athletic accounts totaled up. So currently we have 691,000 allocated for athletics. And for next year, we have roughly 720,000. 29,000 for athletics.
5.4% increase from this current year.
37,008 more.
Are we required to offer sports? Are we
They're
required
extra.
to offer transportation for sports?
They're extracurricular, extra. You're not required to do anything.
Right.
You're not required to do anything above FAPE and providing programs during your academic day. I know there's a lot of talk about pay to play. There's 12 towns in the Shoreline Conference. There's only one town that is doing pay to play right now. And I think they bring in $40,000 when they divide and charge their student athletes to participate. We did this several years ago, and the amount of work and effort to gain back $40,000, it's not something, everything's on the table, but it was something that was monumental. It was a monumental task. And then you get into free and reduced students, and the ability for some students not to be able to pay. And it does bring on a lot of, well, if I pay, I play. So there's so much that goes along with it, and the outcome of what it does. That's the reason why there's only one Shoreline town that's actually doing pay to play. Sports are expensive. When you look at the gamut of what we offer, and we give our youngsters greater than 50% play in their career at our high school, the notoriety and what it does for your community, it's something that brings students to school every day, just like the play, the music program, any electives that we have that are extracurricular. That's what enhances your comprehensive high school. That's what makes you proud when you.
Scholarship opportunities.
Yeah, and it's life-changing. Listen, I'm not going to pit one against the other. Any extracurricular activity that you have, the arts, music, clubs, anything to get students engaged, to get them to go collectively together, to learn the lessons that they learn by participating, is just an added to what we do during the academic day. And they're expensive. There's no question about it. And for a small high school, we offer a lot. We offer a lot. Hockey, fencing, we have co-ed girls swimming with other towns. We have co-ed, or not co-ed, but we have girls playing hockey in other towns, swimming and diving in other towns. We have a gymnast, or 2 gymnasts now competing with Madison, and we have 5 hockey players playing with our team in a co-op, so that we can, field our own team.
How's our indoor track doing?
How they do?
Yeah, did
They're
the
good. The numbers are up.
numbers are up?
Yeah. They're doing a nice job recruiting and getting kids involved, because it's a national trend. The involvement rates are plummeting, and kids aren't doing after COVID. And I think pre-COVID, with the technology, I think that kids are exposed to fewer kids are getting involved. And after 2 years of COVID, we still haven't recouped a number of kids that we want to get actively engaged in something. It doesn't matter what it is.
Is police presence included in this somewhere? Or is that not included? Do we pay for that?
I'm sure it's in there.
That would be in there under purchase service.
We're required, if we run an event and
I don't see it listed, that's all.
It's 500, so about midway down the page.
21,000.
21,530.
Right in the middle, got it, thank you.
That would be where your ambulance coverage,
Yeah.
If needed, and your police services would come out from.
Thank you.
And we usually,
Football games?
for any large crowds, or any crowds that the administrator in charge would deem that we might need added security there. So it's a formula, it's a rate of a minimum amount of hours times the hourly rate of the officer who is in attendance. If it's a ranking officer, it would be more expensive. It would cost you upwards of $1,000 to run a sporting event with police coverage and an ambulance. And then we use the gate money to offset many of those costs. We still have to have our staff there. We use our security at graduations to assist the police, but we do not offset having the police there by using our security for obvious reasons.
EMS.
Can I just get some air in here? It's
Absolutely.
1, 2, 3, 4. What's the difference between that and the 4th one down, where it says athletic security?
That's their.
That would be just our personnel at
Got it, fair enough, okay. Thank you.
That's air conditioning, right? Not heat.
Air conditioning.
Thank goodness.
I'll make it 90.
That's why you're detecting. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
Any questions on sports?
And fall asleep and so.
No, I will say that I asked for that information, and, clearly no one wants to look to remove any sports, but in a budget year such as we're having, it's important to consider everything, as you said. So I wanted to know what the total was, and it's quite a bit.
The next question has to do with our certified staff and how long have our certified staff been here. So what I did is I provided you a list of the no names, the person, the date that they signed their contract, which would indicate their seniority date, and the date of their hiring, and then how long they've been here in the district. So you'll see that it's quite a long list there in front of you, and the ranges anywhere from less than a year all the way up to, I believe, 40 years. So
I think some just talking points that if you look at the top 5, or there's only 5 to 30 years or greater, that's it. So the magic numbers in the retirement world are your age of 60, which then qualifies you for your percentile times your number of years, 37.5 being your maximum amount where you can cap. So people now with expenditures, a lot of people are going 35, 36 years. So if you look at our numbers right now, we really can't count on many employees over the next couple of years because our top 5, only one has over 35 years. There's 4 at 30, and then it drops down into the 20s.
And unfortunately, what we know about benefits is that people can't leave early to pay their own benefits. They maybe
People always
would,
ask, like,
but-
why don't you incentivize people to leave? And, and the way that the hiring is going now, when we hire a teacher, sometimes in a short area, I'm hiring a master's level 20-year teacher. I'm not saving anything on the retiree going out and giving them an expenditure to offset their insurance. 2-person insurance, somebody going out the door is 15, 12, more.
Probably closer to 23 because the family is almost 40.
So, add the 23 onto the retirement, and then the new person comes in with a master's. It's not, I'm just saying, 20 years ago, we'd have a social studies opening, an English opening, we'd get 200 applicants. That's not the case. I mean, if we get 10 and then glean 3 that are, that jump out at you, and I don't want to speak for my administrators, but keep going through this, and the shortages are real. And it's troubling.
The black line on that slide indicates the break where 15 years or more of seniority, and that's the verbiage in the teacher's contract. So once they hit that 15 years and then retire, then they are, they get the benefit of the paid accrued sick time. So that's what that black line indicates. Anybody above that black line has been here more than 15 years. Anybody below is less than, so they are not yet eligible for that benefit. There was a question regarding the total number of employees. So this represents the different groups of people. The number of people is way over to the left. I don't think I can read it from here because it's so small, but the total number of employees is 330, spread out among the different groups.
This PowerPoint is on our website as well, so anyone sitting in the audience or watching on TV, just know that we will get that posted in the next message.
There was also a question regarding the percentage of free. So this is a chart that shows the number of students that receive free or designated as free at each of the schools, reduced, those that are not eligible, and then the total number of students. So in total, we have 257 eligible for free, 74 eligible for reduced, and 1,205 not eligible.
So we're at between 20 and 25%.
You're running roughly between free and reduced 15 to high side 20% at the high school. You're under 500 with over 100 students involved in that.
That was much higher than I expected
The
to
community's
see.
changed. There's no question about it. And these are the families that we know about that fill out the paperwork to qualify. We know that there's some families that don't fill out the paperwork. So it's higher.
Question regarding our instructional coaches. Currently, we have 2 in the district, and this identifies the coding for those 2 individuals, and then the total amount of the salaries is $190,995.
Those are instructional. Don't confuse that with athletic coaches. We don't pay our coaches that much. That was interesting.
Regarding the capital plan that'll be coming from John Florio a later time.
John has submitted a list of capital projects. There are not going to be any surprises to you. A couple just came off, obviously, with the chiller and the auditorium, so those are big items that we needed to get done. But a lot of it is paving in the various schools. There's still quite a bit of paving to be done and other things of that nature. So we'll get that out to you. So, I don't know, Carter, if you want to go through these bullets and speak to them. So
the way that we have this set up, just so you kind of understand, when we're organizing the budget, these are the sort of things that we prioritize. You know, what our priorities, what are our goals, what are we trying to maintain in the district. So some of the things that you noticed from previous meetings, it's connected to every building administrator's growth plan and action plans within the school. So we look to maintain that climate of care and connectedness, and that applies to all of our stakeholders. We want them to feel valued and connected to our schools. Our efforts to strengthen that idea, that culture of thinking and learning for all staff and students. Certainly it's our goal to provide high academic expectations at all times, and that comes through a balance of support and challenge, how we do that. And then it's always a goal to provide for all of our students state-of-the-art facilities and technology that supports education. So those priorities maintain all of our decisions as we go through this process. Similar to that, next slide we have district initiatives. So what are the things that we're working on that help us meet those? So one of them, you see the district instructional vision. That really is a guiding document that really helps our decision-making, our funding, our programming related to teaching and learning. From the curriculum office, we have a curriculum management cycle, which looks at each content area across the pre-K through 22 progression, and it guides the resources and programming decisions that we make along what our students are learning. We have our educator evaluation and support plan that the board approved back in August. That really is the guiding piece of how adults in our district learn and stay current and continue to set goals and improve around how our students are doing. And then lastly, we have this idea of the multi-tiered system of sport. That's a framework, kind of a way of doing business that helps us make decisions and provide and balance support and challenge and what students need to maintain success. And that also helps us reach the vision of the graduate, which is kind of that SOAR idea that you have in high school that we're all aiming for and helping our students produce.
And that doesn't start at the high school. The vision of the graduate, that's embedded all the way down through elementary. That whole thought process has shifted, and Carter and the group with the administrative team have looked at a universal vision of that. We're all going in the same direction towards the same goals, so that the vision of the graduate starts much earlier than ninth grade.
So on the next slide, going through kind of the initiatives, what are our goals? You'll remember these from back in our fall presentation about student achievement and what are the buildings working on, what are the action plans, how are we trying to improve outcomes. So this idea of making thinking visible and building thinking cultures, think of that as an instructional model that we're chasing, and that's how we're trying to align what teachers do in their classrooms. At the same time, we support pre-K through 12 expectations and schedules for that idea of MTSS, which I explained on the previous slide. Really trying to work in small group instruction and support to give any child what they need to be successful, and that's balanced and different depending on where the child is currently. Obviously, we want to provide support curriculum, instruction, programming, and resources that align to that district vision, and we're constantly reevaluating those decisions, fiscally and in programmatic decisions, to make sure that the best opportunities for all of our students. You know that each building has a school-based action plan, really focused at how are they improving student achievement and outcomes for students. So they're looking at benchmarks, we're looking at our state testing and accountability measures constantly, knowing that that's not our end-all be-all, but that is a measurable that we're trying to chase. We know it's extremely important that we continue to prepare all our students to be college and career ready. We want those opportunities to exist pre-K through 22 to get to what Scott was saying, that idea of the SOAR vision and what that looks like, certainly in kindergarten, and how we're chasing that to what it looks like as a 12th grader and beyond are different. But again, we're all trying to build that capacity for all of our students. Lastly, we're all working really hard at kind of that idea of the climate and the culture across buildings in the district, where there is a sense of pride in effort and preparedness and doing your best for all students that align to get into that vision of graduate. So those are kind of the goals. You see those threaded out from Jerome's to TVS to NDAS to the high school and as well as the district. And then lastly, just so you know, again, in building the budget collaboratively, we work on this. We want to maintain appropriate class size. We know that's really important for student learning, even more so important at the primary grades, most important at Jerome, important at TVS, and then still important at the other levels. We want to maintain student opportunities. We do not want to lose our comprehensiveness or limit our opportunities for our students, but we know we have to be innovative in staffing and programming to do that. And then we are really thoughtful in all the decisions that we make around those slides that I just shared with you, those priorities, those goals, as well as the fiscal demands that we're all under in the budget climate that we're under. So we try to guide all of this process and the thoughtful budget that you have in front of you based on this information.
I have a bunch of slides, so I'm going to come up, so I'm not staring at the document heads.
I'm just going to
Fine.
find out this.
All right, so I want to premise the conversation. You're going to see a number of different slides about preschool. The conversation at the last meeting about preschool was very intentionally made immediately following our preschool information night. The reason for that is that seemed like the best venue based on my experience. Everybody gets the same information at the same time in advance of the budget workshops that we had coming up to allow for full participation but also transparency. In the event that caused any confusion, we are going to move forward and provide some clarity tonight. But there was also a frequently asked questions document that was posted the Monday following the preschool night to provide additional clarity to answer the questions that were being posed. So while we're answering those more in depth now in a public forum, we did not wait until now to share those pieces of information with our families within the district. So the initial question that was asked, and disregard the chart below because that does not have to do with your initial question, but the chart that was shared last week to the board involved 3 separate scenarios that you're going to see a similar scenario on the next slide, but within those 3 scenarios there was a discrepancy or what appeared to be a discrepancy between the funding. And the reason for that is because our very first scenario on that slide, as you'll see in the subsequent slides, indicated how much we would receive if we received the tuition that we would be charging families, our IDEA grants, as well as the 2 Smart Start grants. And that combined equaled $353,000. In the event that any of those things shifted, so we lost 1 Smart Start grant or we lost both, that number then dropped and changed to the 335 because that was originally what we were looking at. What I want you to know is that upon reflection and kind of hearing from families and really trying to understand what goes into our preschool program, there was a huge expense that we weren't taking into consideration, and that expense is transportation. We do provide transportation historically to all of our students identified as having special education needs, but as you can imagine, parents having the ability to transport their children to and from a preschool program or even in the midday preschool program becomes very challenging. Historically, our part-day preschool program with no transportation averaged between 3 and 4 general education students. It's a huge problem for us. And so we had made the determination that by adding in transportation, meaning the transportation that was already in existence, so we're using their transportation, but it's still a cost for us, that's what we wanted to reflect within our costs. So what you're seeing on the screen is really our anticipated costs for the 25-26 school year. And these scenarios are now including transportation. It's important to note that we did not include benefits and we did not include curriculum materials and supplies. So what we did was just took the basic, these are the 4 certified teachers, these are the 4 pre-K paraprofessionals, and this is the transportation. So the total cost going in with those things listed is $498,000.
So it's $163,000 for the small vans.
Yeah, which are already in existence and being utilized because of special education students.
Right. Sarah, prior to, so I know this would be the first year that the district would be charging tuition.
Yep.
Right, so prior to that, the Board of Ed was funding the entire
They were.
preschool program.
Yeah, and anybody who was present during budget season last year and for the last, this is my 4th year, so for the last 3 years, there was a very strong push on the part of the board to be able to have a Board of Ed funded preschool program. In light of our current budget season and in the spirit of being fiscally responsible, when we're talking about, I'm hearing words like pay to play, and I'm hearing, cutting teachers and things like that, it's the fiscal responsibility thing to do. It's the fiscally responsible thing to do to acknowledge that this is a luxury that we've had in this district for a really long time. But this is also an anomaly. Surrounding districts do not have free preschool. And while there are free preschool options, the closest that I know of is a part-day option and no transportation. We would be in the same boat that we were in 4 years ago when that was the only program that we had. And so while it's a change, and change can be difficult and uncomfortable, it's a shift that our current budget climate really does warrant. And so that's kind of the impetus for this. And we've fought really hard for the past 4 years on this. But, I think we need to move forward. And knowing that this was a request to have this information, that's where kind of all of this came from. So the 3 pre-K funding scenarios that you have on the screen in front of you, again, all amounting to that $498,000, which is what we determined is the cost of running this program, excluding benefits and curriculum materials and supplies. Scenario 1 means that we have everything we currently have, plus we have the tuition. So we have $185,000, and the $185,000 is based off of what, if we were to charge our current families, right? If we were to take the families that we currently had and we were to charge them tuition, that's where the $185,000 came from. So it's not an exact science. Our numbers are going to look different for next year. But if we were to take that amount and we were to add it to the 2 Smart Start grants that we currently receive at $75,000 each, plus the IDEA funds at $18,000, the Board of Ed responsibility would be $145,000. Currently, the Board of Ed is covering the $145,207 plus that $185,000. So the Board of Ed, even with tuition, the Board of Ed is still responsible for a large portion of these expenses. And again, we're not including benefits and we're not including curriculum materials and supplies. Scenario number 2 is the tuition minus one of those grants. The reason we're subtracting one of those grants is that we have a Smart Start grant and then we have a Smart Start grant for recovery. They are viewed as 2 separate grants. The likelihood of one continuing is extremely high. The likelihood of 2 continuing has been on the fence for a couple of years now. And so just making sure that we're being cautious, I think that we are likely looking at a scenario 2. Again, don't have a crystal ball, but I would anticipate that that's what we're going to be looking at. Our IDA funding remaining the same at $18,000, and our Board of Ed responsibility increases to $220,000. And then scenario 3 is the eventuality if we lost both of our Smart Start grants, and you'll see that our Board of Ed responsibility increases even more to $295,207.
We think that's slightly unlikely.
I'm sorry?
But we think that one's slightly unlikely.
I do think that. I mean, we're not going to know about the grants until June. And so, as a Board of Education, we plan for what we can plan, but also knowing that there's always that possibility. And that's where Martha's magic comes in, because that's under her, that's not me.
Martha's magic, I like that. I like that.
Sarah, the tuition you said comes from current families.
Correct.
Is that an average of household income, or is it?
I'm going to go over how that number is determined. It's very individual, so it's based on family size, it's based on income.
No, I understand that. I'm asking, this number is 185. How did you get that?
I took all of the families that we currently have. I looked at the makeup of their family, so if they had 3 kids, 4 kids, 5 kids, and I took their income, because we have all of that information, and I calculated what their
Perfect. Thank you.
May I just add one thing? I did some calling to local preschools in town and outside of town that take North Branford children. And what I found was that Because when I first looked at the OEC schedule, I panicked, and I thought, this is crazy, because there's some that are too little, but there's some that are way too much. So depending on where your income falls, especially when you get into that 6% category, it takes a huge jump. So I called around, I called 5 places. One of them includes our own FRC preschool, and there's not a lot of apples to apples with what we offer. No one offers transportation, so that's a huge piece that we have to keep in mind as we move forward. One school here in town has a 5-day-a-week program, and that's $684 a month for the students that go there. Another is in North Haven, but takes quite a few North Branford students. They charge for Monday through Friday, 9 to 3, $910 a month. And our own FRC program, again, it's not comparable, but it's at least something to think about, is $860 a month. Now, their hours are 7 to 5, I think, so it's a little bit more. So what I did was I went through and I actually calculated every single income that we could have, and got to the weekly amount and then multiplied it times 36.2. Contacted Mike Downs, he gave me an average median income for our town, and I kind of looked at that across the board. And honestly, what I found was that using that median income, knowing that's not going to, cover everyone, that the amount that we'd be charging would be reasonable comparative to other nursery school options in our town. Again, except for when we get into that high number. So I know that initially we were talking about no cap, or that's what I heard anyway, because we didn't have any discussion about it. But I think that, I personally could support the fees for preschool because they are matching what I'm seeing in the town. But I would want us to consider perhaps some kind of a cap for those higher ends, because I think that that's the place where you're getting into some crazy numbers.
Absolutely, and I don't disagree with you that those higher numbers are coming at a larger rate, but the Smart Start preschool program is really geared towards those lower income families, and so there's really an incentive. That's why the percentage is different. I think when it comes to preschool options, people have to find what fits best for them. And when we look at programs run by certified special education teachers, they have specials, they have, they're in a building that they're transitioning to. I think, we certainly aren't looking, this isn't, I've heard some individuals talk about, education as a business, and that's not the world that I live in. I live in a world where we do what's best for kids, but I also think that this is one option that people have to consider. We're not the only game in town, we certainly understand that, but in looking at the applications that we've received, we have more than enough to fill our current preschool program after last week's, or 2 weeks ago, the information session. I think when we start putting a cap out there, and again, it's a lottery-based system, so if your name gets pulled and your salary happens to be at the higher end, that ends up, and I threw together some scenarios for those of you who didn't go quite as in-depth as Judy did, which I am not surprised at all by that. But again,
Judy, that's not like you.
I know, hard to believe.
Keeping that in mind, that truly is the spirit of the Smart Start grant. In order for us even to be eligible for the Smart Start grant, we have to ensure that a large portion of those families that we're pulling in under the grant are at or below the state median income. And that's why you're seeing a much lower percentage rate when it comes to those weekly fees. And so I absolutely hear what you're saying, and I would say, in the event that, that fee is too much, or they feel that that's not comparable, it might not be the right option for them. I think we're going to get in a tricky position if we start putting a cap, because if we were to put a cap, and I did a very similar activity that you did, but I looked strictly at Board of Education's, and those places that are putting caps are really putting caps based on the cost of their program, and the cost of our program right now, which is about $9,000 to $10,000 per slot, is far exceeding anybody's top tuition so if we were to put a cap, that would be the most appropriate cap to put, is what does it cost to run our program? We're not going to exceed that. And that's what other districts do who have a cap.
But we have surrounding districts that they don't have a sliding a fee scale like the OEC. They have a flat rate that you pay, and it's a take it or leave it. And I think that we offer something that's in between. We offer a flexibility, and I think certainly for some families, especially at the higher end where they're having that higher percentage rate, it might not be the right fit for them. But I think that as we move forward and we continue conversations, whatever we determine in terms of that fee scale, because it is a Smart Start grant that we're receiving, we do have to have a Board of Ed policy for those payments. So the specifics need to be ironed out. What we're presenting to you today is one, we're required to use the OEC fee schedule. That's not a flexibility because we are recipients of the Smart Start grant. And what we did was we took the information that we had and providing the Board of Education with some idea of how we can move forward with this in a manner that acknowledges where we are within the budget, but also acknowledging the needs of the community. And I think that the sliding scale that we currently have allows us to do that. And again, in the subsequent slides, I don't even know which one is next, but there are a couple of scenarios so that you'll be able to see what this truly means. Before we do that, I forgot I did this. Just to give insight for the preschool program, I wanted just to share, you're the board and you know a lot about the district, I want to just specifically iron out what we do within the preschool program. So again, we are proposing a tuition-based program. We currently have 3 4-year-old classrooms that run a full day, 9 to 3:25, 5 days per week, and we provide transportation. They do have access to specials. We have really nice alignment when the students transition into kindergarten, and have a really good idea of who we're getting because we've been providing services. And so really allowing students to have the programming they need to be ready for kindergarten. We have 1 3-year-old classroom, which is part day, so there's both an AM session as well as a PM session. The AM session is 9 to 11:35, and the PM session is 12:50 to 3:25. It runs 4 days a week. It's Tuesday through Friday. And the reason for that is that we do, as a Board of Education, we are required to accept birth-to-3 referrals on a rolling basis. And part of that process is holding the meetings for reviewing the referrals, evaluating those students, and determining eligibility. And that's a lot of work for one teacher. That, again, is consistent with what we've done in the past. And so that's the model that we're going to be moving towards. And then transportation is also provided.
Any question on the 2 programs that we have we're currently providing with the 4 and 3-year-olds?
Okay.
What would happen if we don't receive, or we don't get enough of tuition-paying students?
Well, I think it would, based on our lottery, I don't anticipate that's going to happen, but that tuition is a moving target. We're looking for the tuition to offset some of that Board of Ed responsibility. That's been a conversation at past board meetings. It's been in-depth conversations with the town council and your great questions. And I think, it's one of those things where we're not going to know until we know. And so we utilize this next year to learn about what we're putting together and make adjustments as necessary moving forward. I think it's premature to worry about those things because they may not be valid concerns. As I said before, we have a large number of applications that have already come through. And once we start to move forward on filling those slots, we should know. We have more applications right now. I mean, we have almost 20 more within each age group than we would need to fill our lottery slots. So again, that might shift.
For next year.
I'm sorry?
So we'd have a wait list for next year?
Well, we haven't gone through the lottery system, so there's quite a process involved. We had the meeting 2 weeks ago, I think. Parents immediately filled out applications. Once that time frame closes, I don't have the date off the top of my head, I think it might be next week. We will review those applications, determine who, because there's that first priority placement, which is those that qualify for Smart Start, ensuring that we're meeting that state median income threshold. And then we take anybody that didn't make it into that primary lottery and we throw them into the general for the remaining slots that we have available. Once we do all of that, we notify families that, you were not selected initially, but we're going to go through this process. We have to validate and verify both family income to ensure that they actually qualify for Smart Start and all of those different factors. And then we provide them with, yes, your child is in, do you want to have a slot? Part of our process for securing a slot is going to be, again, in alignment with what other Board of Educations do, is going to be a deposit on that slot, because what we're also doing at the same time is telling other families that, this isn't going to work for you. It was really important to us, and you might remember from last year, that we wanted to have the conversation early. We held off on, things like, kindergarten age and all of that, because we didn't feel like families had enough time. But with 9 months notice, we felt like we were being transparent. We were allowing families to deliberately choose what option worked best for them and to plan accordingly. So we're not looking to drag this process out, but we are going to make sure that we're thorough with that.
So the applications you have in now, these families know what the possible cost is?
I'm going to loosely say yes, because I know there was quite a bit of confusion after the last meeting. And so I think after the frequently asked question document that clarified some things, I think being here tonight and sharing this information, news spreads like wildfire, and hopefully it's accurate information. I think that we're going to be very transparent prior to them making that decision, but everybody that was in attendance at that meeting that filled out the application did receive a copy of that frequently asked questions, which clarified the percentage rate of return and all of that.
Sarah, what about the payment schedules?
Yeah.
So the 3 payment schedules, would you consider doing something monthly to make the cost a little more?
We're looking into that. Again, one of the pieces involved in this is we're not adding any administrative staff to handle any of the additional payment processing, and so we really need to be mindful of our human resources and who we have available to do that work. And so again, we brought this up to you guys a couple of weeks ago, preliminary. I think you all knew it was coming. There was some, inquiry around it and wanting more information. But Martha's been helpful in identifying if we have an online system. I think what we're likely going to do is if we can have a direct payment that automatically comes out, that could be on a monthly basis. But if a family is not interested in doing that and wants to make, cash or check, it is going to need to be with greater regularity, because the ability of us to process weekly payments or even monthly for the number of families that we're going to have, and then tracking that down, is going to be very difficult. We do have, and again, I wanted to make sure that I was educated on what's going around in surrounding towns, not just geographically close to us, but also within the same demographic as us. So looking at a town that looks like North Branford, and every single one of them are accepting payments twice a year, 3 times a year. And many of them, the first payment, you have a payment in September and you have a payment in January, February. And so we did look at those things. We just need to be really mindful about the impact that's going to have, because if, again, we did weekly or monthly, it's going to take away the ability of that individual who's processing it to do the job that they're already doing, because it's a big job to be able to do that. So we're hoping that we'll be able to have an automated system. It looks like we're going to, and that might allow us to have some greater flexibility if families are willing to make that agreement.
We're always flexible. We're always open to ideas. Tom is working with Martha, and we've updated and upgraded our systems, and this is just one of the things, without creating a nightmare for the resources that we don't have. What's a flexible alternative that's much easier for parents to just have it directly taken out every month, or if they work for us, coming out of their every 2-week pay period. So all of those conversations are happening.
And so I provided Scott for you guys with a copy of the Office of Early Childhood fee schedule that's used by families, just so that you have access to it, and we highlighted the column that you're going to be referencing. It's a very simple document once you know what you're looking for. You're looking for the family size, and you're finding the family income, and then you're scrolling right over to the preschool time column. So again, it's preschool, school time. School time means it's that when they're in school, it's not full day, it's not part day. We want to get that kind of 9 to 3 area. And for that range, we're really looking at anything between 2.4 and 6%.
I have a question. Could you back up? Do you have more slides? Sorry.
I have a few more.
Can we back up just to scenarios? Okay, so I got this 2 SMART grants here, right? I got them on this
Yep.
beautiful sheet that Martha gave out. And we anticipate one, or could potentially lose one, or we could gain, right? Who knows? But from judging from the earlier discussion where, we're talking wisdom, for instance, there's a grant that we lost, right? Or what was it, Smart Start grant?
No, these are Smart Start.
Sorry, not the Smart Start. What was the one?
The
Right to Read or whatever it is? Right.
Right to read.
Right, that expired. So we can anticipate this potentially both of them expiring. Is that a fair assumption?
Yes, and there's a contingency plan for that. So we are bound by, and I don't think anybody here is going to like this conversation, but I'm going to be transparent. We are bound by the Office of Early Childhood Fee Schedule because we have the Smart Start grants. If we don't have the Smart Start grants, as a board, it needs to be determined how are we going to identify tuition. So a neighboring town that does not have Smart Start grants has a flat tuition. It doesn't matter how much you make, it doesn't matter what your family size is, your tuition is going to be, and I have the number for you, it's going to be $8,000 a year for a full day program. But they don't, I'm sorry?
No, go ahead.
But that district does not receive Smart Start funding. So we are utilizing this system, and this is not a me decision. I support the program because I am special services and it's an integrated program, but this is not only a North Branford decision, but also a Board of Education decision to determine if we lost both grants, how do we move forward from that?
Has it always been 75 grand, or has it been more? I thought when we first started, it was higher. Like 2-3 years ago, it was higher.
2 for 150. So
2 for 150.
We had one, and then I think for a year, and then we were able to obtain more.
Second, right.
Yeah.
And so, it's not going to be an all is lost scenario if we lost both. We would just have to come together and determine what we're going to do from there, how we're going to.
You said 8,000 is what that town charges?
$8,000 for a full day program.
And that's without transportation.
That's without transportation.
Yes, very few of them offer
And that's
transportation.
$222
But the
a week.
other thing to consider too, sorry, I think I interrupted you, Mars, to be
Yeah.
done, is the number of programs. So I spoke with Wallingford, they have 10 pre-K classes. So their need for, we only have 3 and the 2 half-days. So that makes a difference in itself too, as to how we would approach it if we lost those grants. We have less program, we necessarily have to maybe charge more. So we would, I don't think, be in a great spot if we lost those grants.
No, that's what I mean.
So I'm hopeful. And I believe they're yearly. Is that
That's what I'm
correct? The Smart Starts are every year we have to reapply.
Sarah, if we were to lose the Smart Start, for children in our district who kind of rely on that to be able to receive a preschool education, are there any other places that they can go?
Well, I know that FRC is a fantastic option, and when we do the presentation, that's often an option that families are going between our program and theirs. In terms of a local place, I don't know off of the top of my head. But I would imagine that there would be some state resources that they would be able to access for that information. And as a
Well, I think there's Care for Kids. There's Care for Kids that they could apply for, for school.
Where's that?
It's through the state. Under a certain income, same kind of formula, and then they pay a certain percentage. They do it for childcare.
But we would have to, in a program like that, the state then reimburses the program, which is quite a lengthy process.
Right, but when she's asking if there's other places, I'm not necessarily saying for us,
yes,
but there are other.
Because my concern would be for a child now that's not going to be on par with their peers in kindergarten if they don't have the option for our program.
Yeah, it's a huge concern.
Are you good? Are you good? You wanted the slide?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm fine.
That's okay.
Thank you.
All right, so I wanted to provide you with a couple of scenarios just so you can see what it would look like. So in all of the scenarios, we're looking at a family of 4. The income is changing. So what I did was I took actual families that we have in our program now, and kind of broke it down for you. So a family of 4 whose combined income is $57,000, their weekly family fee is $52.89. Now, this isn't the lowest amount, but I was trying to be reasonable in terms of what that would look like. And their annual family fee is $1,914.84. If you look at the middle of the road, a family of 4 making $158,000. And when I say middle of the road, I'm simply stating middle of the numbers that we currently have in our program. We're looking at a weekly fee of $158.83 and an annual fee of $5,749.50. You will see within each of the scenarios that the percentage rate is changing. So that lower end, we're looking at 4.8, the middle of the road, we're looking at 5.2, and the higher end is 6%. The school age does not go above 6%, so the school time, just so that you are aware. The family size of 4 with an annual income of $214,000, we're looking at a weekly family fee of $247.67 and an annual fee of $8,965.
Can you send us these slides?
I'm pretty
They'll
sure
be posted on the website tonight.
Okay.
And we can send it.
And then when we're looking at our 3-year-old program, what we're going to do with our proposal in this scenario is calculating the 4-year-old school day at a rate of return of 45%. The reason for that is because we're still having those overhead costs. We're still having the curriculum materials and supplies. We're still having certified staff. We're having all of those pieces. So while it's not an exact science, we wanted to ensure that it provided for a smooth transition when those families do go into the 4-year-old program. As you may have heard from the previous presentation, any family, any child who successfully completes the 3-year-old program is immediately grandfathered into the 4-year-old program. It's very intentionally an incentive that we set because we're really trying to bolster our 3-year-old program, and being that, even historically when it was a full-day program, it was a little more difficult for us to fill. And so looking at that school time day for the preschool, those same income levels that we had before, calculating it at 45%, those are the annual fees the weekly and annual fees that you're looking at. Scenario 1 is a weekly fee of $23.80, annual fee of $861. Scenario 2 is $71.47 for the week and $2,587 annually, and then for the third scenario, you're looking at $111 for the week, $4,000 for an annual fee.
You back up one slide for me just for a second. Okay, thank you. And then go forward if you could. Why is it divided by 52? Are we just taking raw numbers?
So, no, what the state does is that the Office of Early Childhood fee scale gives you what it would be based off of a 52 year. So we back it out to be what would it be per year, and then we multiply it by 36.2, which is the number of weeks that we have in a school year, and that's how the calculation is made.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So my question for 3-year-olds then is that we are not receiving any grants for our 3-year-old program.
Correct.
Because otherwise we'd have to use this part-time column on the OEC.
Which is not in our favor.
Correct,
Yeah.
yes. Okay, so I just want to make that clear, that this is a better situation
100%.
than if we had to follow the fee schedule for 3s.
Yep.
So Sarah, just for understanding, scenario 2 at $71.47 per week for the partial day program. That's 4 days. It equates to about 10 hours total, 2.5 hours per day.
It is, yep.
Right? So for 10 hours, it's just over $7 an hour for care with transportation.
Correct.
You did that math pretty quickly.
Good practice.
And that's late at night too. Impressive.
For anybody that's had their child, in daycare, this shouldn't be these numbers shouldn't be surprising. They should actually be welcomed if they've had their children in daycare prior. You know what I mean? It could be a little bit of a shock to people that have had their children, they haven't had to pay for childcare for the first 3 or 4 years of their life. Then it kind of hits you like, oh boy.
And we acknowledge the fact that we have individuals in the program that are in it now and not paying the cost. We get that.
Mm-hmm.
And we understand that that's, when I came here, I was a new person. Change is hard.
Mm-hmm.
Change is hard for the people that I'm meeting, but it's also hard for me being in a new district, and it's really uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's an intentional step that as a district we need to take, and I think the discomfort's going to be for a year. I think, and then moving forward, this is another option that we have in the district that's not being compared to being free, but being compared to the other options that are available. And I think there's a lot that we offer that we're proud of, and I think that even at the fees, they're competitive. They might not be for everybody, but I think it's a quality program, and to be able to have, children come into the school that they're going to be in, not just come in when they're in kindergarten, but come in when they're 3 and allow them to be ready for kindergarten, because that's the biggest thing, and I think, Judy, you lived it, being at Jerome, having kids be ready for kindergarten is a whole different ballgame now than it used to be. And so I think the structure of our program for both 3 and 4-year-olds with, we have a set curriculum, we have certified teachers that are teaching, we have paraprofessionals in the building, we have a social worker that comes in and does social skills groups with the whole class, and there's a lot being offered. And so I get that it's a big jump from free, but I think it's a competitive rate that we're recommending.
Yes, and I will say that from a personal standpoint, I have a 4-year-old in the program who receives special services, and if you were to ask me to pay this price next year, I would happily do it for what the program is amazing. He gets transportation, he sees a school day like a normal school day. I have no worries for him next year going into kindergarten, because he knows the school, he knows the staff, and even if he was in there as a typical kid, if there was an issue, you have all those resources available now to get, versus being in a daycare, where now you can get whatever you need, PT, OT, speech.
What are you saying about daycares?
I was just saying, this is a daycare.
I have a daycare order now, we are wonderful. But I can't provide
Just saying,
But you don't have the wraparound
correct
services.
I can't offer services like the school does. So I think that the price can be shocking to some people. The only real feedback I received was people who were concerned about the lack of a cap.
Yep.
But I think you've explained that very well.
And I think the fact that all of a sudden was being charged, I think that there was going to be a fee, took over in people's heads. And I was getting all kinds of texts about this, and I'm like, you're looking at the wrong column. You're looking at full day. It's not full day, it's school day. So first of all, you're in the wrong column to begin with. I think, and I'm not saying that wasn't explained by you, but I think the fact that there's going to be a fee, there's going to be a fee just stuck in their head, and because it's been free all along, and
absolutely, and I think sometimes
they didn't see past it.
We take for granted the fact that I do this, I know these documents inside and out, and so not drawing attention to the fact that there's 6 different columns that you choose from, and people naturally will go to the larger percentage, and then it spreads like wildfire. And I think that was the reason we immediately sent out the frequently asked questions document and wanted to be as transparent today so that it can be clear for families that there's and the fact that there's a choice. This is a choice. It's not a requirement. I think it's a very good choice, but I think it's just important to have the full picture, and I'm hopeful that the clarity that we're providing more clarity tonight and easing some of the concerns that have been shared in the community.
Well, we have to keep in mind, I think for myself, I'll speak for myself, is that if there was any possible way to continue this as a free program, I would love to see that happen.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, the financial situation that we and many other towns are in right now, it's not a feasibility. And I would hope that people would remember and keep in mind that we have an excellent program. And it's not just because it's free.
Absolutely.
That the start to the education that the kids are getting in this school is amazing. So I would hope that we could keep that too, kind of in the forefront of our minds as we move forward. That it's not just about money. It's just we've got a lot to offer.
Absolutely.
Sarah, could you just explain just what those, in the parentheses, the CDC, SR, and SS stand for in those columns?
Oh, that's Smart Start. School Readiness or Smart Start, those are 2 separate grants.
Okay.
And so that's simply stating that that's the line that you utilize if you're a recipient of a Smart Start grant. We are not eligible for school readiness, but it's very similar.
Okay.
And so that's just indicating that that's the line to look at when you receive those funds.
What's our capacity for pre-K? Right now, we have, what, 59 students between the two? Is that right?
Close to it. It's a moving target. We do have ongoing referrals, so anytime a child turns 3, if they are identified as having a special education need, they start on their 3rd birthday. It doesn't matter if it's a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. It doesn't matter if it's in September or it's in February. And so right now, what we're looking at, I did bring numbers with me. We are looking at, those are the number of, currently right now, our general education, we're looking at about 10 in our 3s, and about 12 in our 3-year-old gen ed, about 12 in our special ed, knowing that our class size for our 3-year-olds starts out much smaller at the beginning of the school year because those students start coming in. And I think in my last conversation with Colleen, we're looking at 8 more that we're evaluating before the end of this school year. So that's a potential increase of 8 by the time we end. And then for our general education slots that are available through the lottery system, we have 30 Smart Start slots. And then we're looking at approximately 10 more for our 3-year-old program, but knowing that there might need to shift and adjust some. Sometimes, based on the needs within the classroom, we might have to go a little bit lighter. Some of our needs are higher based on the individuals that we have and the supports that they require, so we keep those things in mind, but it's a lot of creative planning.
Well,
I guess, what was the capacity question? Like, can we take 50 more, 10 more?
We can't exceed 15 within our 4-year-old programs. So 15 is the cap, no matter what.
So 45 total.
45 for our 4s. And then our 3-year-old program, because it's a half-day program and they're little ones, we typically try to keep it under 10 for both sessions. We tend to be lower in that number simply because it's a 3-year-old program and it's part day, so we tend to have fewer kiddos coming in. That's a little bit of a harder program to maintain our 50-50 ratio, also because we don't know at the beginning of the year how many people are going to be coming through, and so we do our best to prepare, but they just keep coming.
Got it. What about capacity and space?
We currently have adequate space in the event that we grew any larger, which I don't anticipate. We did have an additional space previously and we were able to back out of that, but we would need another classroom. But Beth Parker, the principal at Jerome, has been wonderful to work with in the event that anything additional is needed. And so if more space is needed, we find the space.
Got it. Okay.
Through creative design.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so any questions with what we were presented with tonight? Obviously, we have another scheduled meeting to get your list of questions ready, get them to us, similar to this, and we'll run a similar format, or if there's anything else that you want to see in the next meeting. The sooner you get them to us, the better. We'll get them back to you, but then we'll incorporate those into our PowerPoint with answers. So those who can't see it, and it'll get posted on our website, just so everyone has the opportunity to view what was presented.
You think capital requests will be ready next week?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, John. He put together a list and he'll be here. I'll have to just.
Can you send to us ahead of time?
Capital? Sure.
And Ms. Vaughn, may we thank you once again for your thoroughness in answering our questions and sending the charts, and I know that doesn't happen by magic, even though there's Martha magic. So I appreciate all the time that you took to put that together for us.
And then we'll ask what I want to say, so thank you.
I was going to comment that, but no, I didn't want to.
Sorry.
No, I'm kidding you. And while you're complimenting just the administrative team for their efforts and teamwork in doing this, and we're looking at pre-K through 22. Okay, so it's all-encompassing for every student in this district. And as an administrator, you're territorial about your building. You don't want to lose anything. And I would be disappointed if any of them sitting out there, including special ed and Carter, would, they're gonna fight. They're gonna fight for what's right for their buildings, knowing it's the bigger picture. And those are the hard decisions you're gonna be charged with coming up with when you give us a number to go back and collectively build our budget. And it's not easy. And you'll see the numbers are gonna trickle out over the next several weeks around surrounding towns and where their numbers are at. And I think you're gonna be staggered by what you're gonna see. And now you're well-versed in how we got to this triangle and the perfect storm with relying on monies from the past that we were able to save and hold on. But then when we robbed Peter to pay Paul, and Peter doesn't have any more money. So now it's just Paul. And that's where we're at. Or Paul.
So we now have public input time, right? It's on our agenda. So is there anyone out in our audience that would like to give public input? Now would be the time. And those items are limited, well, the public comments are limited to items that are on the agenda. So anybody would like to come up and ask a question or not a question, just give public input. Hi, come on up there.
Hello.
Hello.
I see so many familiar faces. So, I'm Stacy.
Name and address. And your name and address?
Oh, perfect. So my name is Melina Proto. I live at 124 Parsonage Hill Road in North. I live with my husband and 2 young children. I grew up in town, attended North Branford schools from kindergarten to graduation. I'm a proud Thunderbird, and I'm excited to watch my children grow up here. I attended the pre-K information session last month and was surprised to hear about the potential implementation of a sliding scale tuition with no cap. A sample calculation was given which suggested an 8% gross annual household income divided by 52 weeks to obtain the weekly pre-K rate. I know that this is now, I guess, new numbers have come out, and the top was, I believe, 6%. Without the cap, this would mean families would pay astronomical rates for pre-K. This has been the primary concern, so it's not that there's going to be a fee, it's that there's no cap. So I know other families in town who live in town or have moved here recently, they also agree with me on this. I understand the cost has to come from somewhere, but I'm not suggesting an increase in taxes to cover this. However, a cap is necessary. This is a public integrated pre-K program that runs about 6 hours a day, Monday through Friday. Neighboring towns like North Haven Public Schools have a pre-K program that costs $678 a month for an almost 8-hour day. Durham charges families below the 400% federal poverty level based on household size are eligible for free pre-K, and those above 400% pay 2% of their income. I would like to see our town be more reflective of these amounts. Many of us have more than one child requiring an education or in childcare. I'm hoping for a more realistic amount to be settled upon that covers the cost of education, but is also fair and equitable. So that's really the key thing that I want to push, is fair and equitable for all families of all income levels. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Any more public input? Please. Yes.
That way it's in the microphone.
Yeah.
My name is Sarah Seward-Scheifel. I live at 34 Meadowlark Lane in Northford. I too am here regarding the tuition for the preschool program. My son is currently enrolled in the program. It is absolutely wonderful. He has learned so much. We went to a private school the year prior. I cannot even share how much he has learned in this program. The reason I am also here is regarding a cap for the tuition. I do understand the money does need to come from somewhere to cover this, and I would in no way pull my son out of the program, regardless of what the cost is. However, the cap seems, without a cap, this does seem difficult at different income levels. What I will also share in my concern, and I know that the schedule for payment isn't exactly set in stone, and I believe as Sarah mentioned, there's some administrative costs that would be associated with taking payment. However, if you're looking at an $8,000 a year divided by 3 payments, or if you were looking at the largest amount, I think it was $8,900, you divide that by 3 payments and you take 2 payments within a 3-month time span, you're looking for $6,000 in 2 months, which is, in my opinion, a lot. So I'm just here to share my opinions regarding the tuition as well for the pre-K program.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public comment, input? Any other comments? Public input? I'll ask a third time. Anyone wanting to give public input or make comments? Seeing none, we'll close that public comment section. And
We're adjourned.
we're adjourned. Oh, yes, our next meeting will be Wednesday, February 12th, 2025, 6 p.m. right here, Stanley.
Thank you.